Welcome to the Digital Insight, where today I'm joined by Rachel Lemos, Director of Procurement at Canadian West Bank. In today's episode, we talk about what it means to be a leader, to be a role model, and to be a mentor in business, particularly in times of great change. So today we're going to be talking about the importance of role models and mentorship, obviously in the procurement space. I speak to a lot of people, a lot of CPOs, and a lot of sort of younger procurement professionals at the sort of different stages of their career. And one thing that comes up a lot is indeed, mentorship, role models, looking at successful leaders or inspiring leaders. And it comes up a lot more as well when we sort of look at the leaders of the future, the procurement professionals of tomorrow, kind of what work we're doing to sort of train them today. Where do you stand on this then? What are your thoughts on the idea of the significance of having role models, mentors, and inspiring those next generations of supply chain and procurement professionals?
I think we all do have a responsibility to coach, to mentor, to inspire the next generation. And I think it's something that we have to make an effort. It has to be intentional. We hear so many times in many organizations people saying, we just tell people what to do because we don't have time and time is money. And that's a misconception that I would say that you are investing, you're not spending when you're doing that for your team. And I say that because many times you see people leaving their jobs and they feel the pressure, and the leader starts asking themselves, why is that happening? And it's with us. It's our responsibility to be coaching, to be close to our team, and to really know where we should coach, where we should mentor, where we should teach them. So these are like different roles that we play as a leader, and we do have that responsibility. And I always say to my team, when we're in that role, we are doing our best. We are doing what we know to be the right thing. There's no right and wrong, and it's okay to make mistakes. If we learn with our mistakes, it's totally fine. So I feel that we all have that responsibility to every day to wake up and to show our best to our team and be present to them. And I always say that to my team, you just get one chance to make the first impression. That's the only time that you make that impression. You don't have a second, and that sticks. Like how you show up, how you talk to people, how you approach them. That's how they perceive you, and that tells how they come back or do not come back to you for advice, for leadership, for coaching, or for what have you.
And you touched upon a couple of notes there. So you mentioned obviously a misconception and a kind of a misunderstanding as to the significance of it in some places. And while we're looking at it from a perspective of largely from kind of it's helping dealing with the future, it's helping dealing with the people who are up and coming and the younger those people earlier in their careers, that sort of approach. But how important is it when we talk a lot about, for example, procurement transformation, the big topic that everyone talks about, change management comes up a lot, and how much of a role does kind of that mentorship and that kind of responsibility that you're talking about play in that regard, in terms of it makes that process easier. It makes change management easier if you've kind of already got that established relationship, that kind of closeness and intimacy with your team, and with that sort of relationship with the people. How does that help the change management angle?
Wonderful. So when it comes to change management, you really need to have your team with you. When you're changing anything, you're moving people away from comfort zones, and you have to have that trust. They have to see that the vision's solid. You know what you're trying to do, and they are part of it. You're not dragging people; they are part of it. So change management is something that I would say procurement is constantly a conduit for change, and we need to embrace that role, and we need to make sure that when we're doing that vision that you have for where you want to go is clear to everybody. So you bring the team along. You're not trying to do yourself. When leaders try to do change management by not taking the time to share the vision, to share where we're going with that, then your team is lost. You're just dragging people. The process is much more difficult, and that's not desirable.
And does it change you? So obviously, you didn't start out as a procurement leader. You've worked your way up. You've kind of been at the different levels. You've seen it. You've been led. You're now leading. When you get to that leadership position and you understand and recognize that you have a key influence on your team, the people around you, and even people who aren't in your team, just in your business, does it change your approach? Do you think a little differently because you're aware of that responsibility, or is it kind of second nature because it's just always been a part of your career, both to you and you know what I mean? Like, is it something that just kind of comes naturally because you've seen it all at every level?
I think it comes naturally. It has to come naturally. You when you're navigating through your career, people need to change one thing when they are going through their career and making decisions. People normally think it's their leaders responsibility to make changes. It's the leader responsibility to influence, but it's not. I think coaching from the bottom up, it's an important role that everybody can play and should be playing. So I always say it's a twofold approach. Where do we start with that? The leaders is by asking questions to your team, let them come up with the solution. Let them think about you're developing the strategic thinking with your team and coming up with a solution that's not yours. And this is so much more rich than you're trying to tell your team how to do things. So that's how I feel that it comes naturally. And from the team is respectfully challenging your leader if this is not there. If this is not present, they're not giving you the voice, the opportunity to bring ideas, recommendations, new solutions, new ways to do things, then something is not right. And you need to challenge that
Mm-hmm.
respectfully. There is ways to come up with your ideas and do not fear. Do not fear, because one thing I tell my team, if we make mistakes together, we are growing together. But if everybody's fearing to come up with ideas or come up with any new ways of doing things, then that fear paralyzes the entire team and the team is not as effective as it should be. So we need to be really, it's a two avenue. It needs to be present and it's not there. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. And what about outside of the procurement space then? So key thing about many organizations' transformation journeys is that it's not just changing procurement. You're not just fixing or amending or re-engineering the way procurement works. You're doing so in a way where you're bringing in different parts of the business to understand procurement more. And obviously that can include areas that have some knowledge of procurement and other areas that have literally never thought about procurement other than, oh, it's just an office down the hall. How does that change when it comes to that sort of side of it? So obviously you've talked about dealing with your own team, having those honest conversations with your team and asking your team to challenge the leaders. But what about, when those people aren't in your team, that they are coming from a different expertise, a different background? How do you kind of encourage it there and almost say to them, come on, challenge me, don't be scared. It's all about, working together and being fostering change together.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, Dale. One thing that I think that starts well is by leveling expectations. When you're changing things or you're talking about things that it might be new for someone, you need to take that time to explain how things will go about, what these things will mean, how this impacts the organization, how this might impact that specific group that you're talking to. And sometimes it's just really coming to a point where every side of the coin has something that they want to achieve or to want to get out of, as an outcome of what you're trying to do. And if the conversation doesn't happen to level expectations, what I'm trying to achieve or what are you trying to achieve, what does success look like for you in what we're trying to achieve together, then I think that's really where we can sometimes start having difficult relationships and without really noticing where we're going, what's preventing us to work together as a team. And as you said, it's taking the time to understand where can I be more helpful here in a way that I'm bringing the level of knowledge to where it should be, and then we can change something. There is a mistake that we do many times when we start saying, okay, we need to solve a problem, we need to do something, but which problem are we trying to solve? Is that my problem? Is that department problem? Or are we trying to achieve something that's greater for the organization? That sometimes is uncomfortable for my team, it's uncomfortable from somebody else's team, but it's the best for the organization. And having those conversations, leveling expectations, taking the time to walk through the process and where we're going, what we're trying to achieve, the why, the how. I think that makes a big difference on how we can establish these relationships and really go through the process.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this before. When we talk about kind of not necessarily failures, but we know that as much as we'd love it, change and these sort of journeys, they're not going to be easy. There's a lot of kind of there's many hurdles to jump over, to kind of overcome, and sometimes you cannot overcome them. You have to kind of think of differently, and sometimes go in a different direction. How important is it for you as a leader, when not just talking to your team, but also about your own approach to your strategies, your approach, just your approach to your day-to-day job, really, to recognize and to admit to yourself and to the teams around you that sometimes things are difficult and you might not have the immediate answer, and it's about being honest enough to say that and say, well, let's work together to find a solution.
You hit the nail. That's exactly it. The world is not perfect, and we will deal with difficult situations. You will deal with difficult people. You will deal with difficult problems to solve. And definitely, we do not have the answers to everything. We cannot claim that. I think we're learning every day through every situation that we go through in life. I say that you have to be honest. You have to say, okay, we don't know the answer to that. We don't know how to solve this problem, but we have to find this together. It is a joint solution that needs to be found. And I always say there are too many leaders trying to do things by themselves. They're trying to direct. And that's where you come with that differentiation between leader and bosses. And we have so many articles that says how people are leaving their bosses, not their jobs. It's really like we don't know the answer to everything, and that's okay. But let's find out together. I think that's what it comes to. We don't have to have the answers for everything, but we have to find a solution together for the problems that we will face, for difficult situations, for challenges, what have you.
And when we think then about, you said a good point there about people don't leave their jobs, so they're leaving their bosses. When we think about sort of one of the things that comes up a lot in conversations I have with procurement professionals is that procurement knows procurement, and similar to what we said earlier, other functions in the business might not know procurement as well. From a leadership then, and from looking at kind of inspiration and kind of role models, is it important? So, say if I was a procurement professional, I was just starting out, and I was kind of looking to be inspired by somebody. Is it important to not just limit my inspiration, as it were, to somebody in procurement, but actually to look at somebody who, what I mean? Like, don't just think about, oh, well, this person is successful in procurement, I'm going to follow that person's advice, but also to kind of think broadly about anybody from any part, any function of the business, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think the first mistake we make is when you're choosing a mentor is to look for someone that can teach you something. You're not looking for someone to instruct you. You're looking for someone that will shape your life, will help you to maybe you challenge your views or your point of views, or it, that person needs to shape your life in a way that it pauses you to think about things that you would not be thinking if you're just learning technical skills. So when I think mentors should not be selected on the basis of their industry or their expertise, but what the perception that they can bring to you, what the point of view that can bring to you that you have not considered. So I had two mentors that were not formal mentors in my life, but were people that I trust, that I went when I needed to get some advice or when I was considering a difficult situation. And when you talk to these people, you are in that informal mentee position, and you're seeking for something. And so my advice is when you're looking for someone to be a mentor, always talk about expectations. When people come to me and say, hey, can you be a mentor to me, like I always ask this question: what would you be expecting from this relationship? What can I Where can I contribute? What are you looking from me? How can I be a mentor for you? That's how you start building relationship. And if I see sometimes it's within procurement, they're looking for expertise, I might be just in a good position to say, hey, consider taking this course here, and I think you're going to achieve what you're looking for. But when you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for someone that will inspire you, will bring something that you're not seeing at that moment. Maybe you have in you. It's not that you don't have it in you, but you many times through life we go through those tough times and you're blindsided by the situations. You can't see beyond circumstances. And that's when you need to have that person that you trust, that you admire, that and nobody's perfect. They go through their struggles too. We all go through our struggles, but you have to find that person that you see as a mentor to you, no matter what expertise or industry they are working at, and go to these people. They will certainly bring something that will inspire you.
Yeah. And thinking about your own journey, then, so you said, of course, you've had mentors in your life. You've learned from them. You've had those relationships. You've had that trust. You've sort of been inspired by them. Can there ever be a point where you? This is it's not a difficult question, but it might sound a bit blunt, but where you get to a point where you no longer need a mentor, or even now in your position as a leader, where you're much more experienced, do you still find yourself thinking about those mentors and the things they taught you, but also do you still have someone, if not officially labeled as a mentor, but somebody in your life career wise that still inspires you even now, even though you are much more in an elevated position than you were when you started?
Definitely. I think we all need a mentor. We all need people that we trust, that we admire, that inspire us. And we need to be close to these people. We can't walk together. Life is complicated. And you said earlier, like we will face difficult challenges, difficult situations. And you always need to have that one person that you trust. It doesn't need to be one, but it's good that you have a couple that you can really trust and that can serve you as your rock. That's the place that you feel safe, that you know that you can share. And one mistake that we all do is that we try to be strong all the time. Like leaders are not perfect, and we need to be vulnerable. It's okay to not be strong all the time. It's okay to not have good days. And what I do when I don't have good days, if I can, I cancel some meetings and I just try to refine my balance, find where I need to be around people. Again, people don't choose to be around you. And if you're not having a good day or if you're not having a good moment in your life, it's okay to step back and to refined where I need to find my balance again. I don't know. It's just like you need to have those people around you that you can go and it's your safe place to be at that moment. There is no way that you grow to a point in your career that you don't need anybody anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true ever.
And final couple of questions then. One will be a nice sort of softball, as it were. But this one, thinking about sort of key bits of advice then, you've said yourself what advice you would give, but thinking about the things you've learned, the things you were taught, the things you picked up from your own role models, your own mentors, how as time's gone on, as you've obviously, like we said before, you've now reached quite an elevated status, you're a leader yourself, you're in a position of responsibility. How has your perspective on what you learned from them, if you think back of your time with them and what kind of some of the key things you took from spending that time with them, has your perspective changed on that? Or has it almost, now that you've sort of in the position that they were, you can see exactly where they were coming from? Like, how has your own mindset changed in terms of what they taught you, what you picked up from your time, developing and learning alongside them?
I had two leaders that helped me to shape the way that I see my responsibility as a leader, and also to see how I my responsibility as an individual. One of them always reemphasized that to me: you're the master of your own destiny. So every time that you face a situation and you come to people trying to find an answer to your problem, that's the wrong approach. Try to listen your inner self. Try to listen to what your heart is telling you. But always remember that one thing that I heard from this leader that I really admire is we are the masters of our own destiny. So you own the decisions and the outcome of your decisions. So if you're looking for someone to give you an answer, you put yourself in that position that what if that goes wrong? What now? Like, is that person responsible because they gave you the answer? No, you are responsible. We own it. We own our decision, the outcomes of comes from that. So that was a big lesson for me, that I really take charge in making decisions about my career, where to go, how to stay. Every time that you're putting an opportunity comes up and you say, what do I do with this? You have to pause and think about it. And that master of your own destiny stuck with me. And the other one is really be bold, be courageous. That's from another leader, and that's a very good friend of mine, and she's always been in situations where she inspired me and being really upfront and being honest. And sometimes people get confused about the concept of being upfront to be uh, misunderstood as you're too strong, or you're too aggressive, but that's really not the point. Like, being bold, being courageous, being straightforward doesn't mean that you have to be in a position that you're going to be seen as, oh, that person is too strong and it's too aggressive. That doesn't come from that place. Being bold is being genuine. Being bold is being courageous. Is taking that honest, candid approach with people and telling them sometimes that things are okay or not okay with you. And that builds trust. That builds a great relationship and a long lasting relationship.
Yeah. And final question then. We often talk a lot about storytelling and the significance of storytelling, and particularly in procurement, where procurement has to get better at essentially showing itself off to others. But when it comes to role models then, and it comes to mentorship, I think everybody knows the significance of them, but perhaps more could be said, more could be done to kind of communicate that, so that, like I say, you can remove those misconceptions and people can just understand a bit more about it from a leader's perspective, but also from like board level and above. What more do you think organizations and leaders can be doing to encourage leadership role models and mentors, to encourage it more, to make it a much more recognized and active discussion, so that more people take it on and become leaders themselves? And so it just becomes much more of a norm and a recognized norm.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I think that creating real mechanisms that encourage people to look for mentor mentees relationships, is the key. I'm very proud to say that in my former employer, we had a committee that was dedicated to, we call this committee AIM, which was for short for Acts of Inspiration and Mentorship. And that group was really all the time offering uh, opportunities for people to connect and to find out how to connect with people in a formal and an informal mentor-mentee relationship. And that was a fantastic success. We saw more and more people coming, more and more people approaching others, and the cross experience that you're referring earlier to, in this conversation, where people were coming from completely different departments and saying, hey, would you be my mentor? And that was very interesting. That creates a richness for the organization, because you're not looking to instruct people, as I said earlier. You're looking to inspire them and see the areas that they're looking for help, or they're looking for support, or how can you, not being a leader, be coaching a leader too. So there's so much richness in these relationships, and creating this as a formal process in the organization really makes up a strong organization that's encouraging people to look for it, creating the mechanisms for people to find each other in that way that supports each other. And not only that, I would say that it's a very positive outcome for the organization, in a sense that you create a lot more collaboration. You create that environment where people see that they belong because of those relationships that are established. So I would strongly encourage any organization to be creating those mechanisms, creating those programs, offering and fostering that culture within the organization for people to be seeking this type of relationships.